Amen. How many of you have seen this movie, Dr. Doolittle? Yeah? Okay, for those of you who did not, please don't go home tonight and watch. No, I don't recommend that. But what I'm saying is, what's the special talent of this Dr. Doolittle? He can talk to animals. Can you believe that? Do animals talk? Well, some birds, but they mimic, right? But you'll be surprised that the person that we're going to talk tonight actually can understand animal. Solomon. Not only animals, even plants. He was so wise in 1 Kings 4, verses 29 to 34. This is what the Bible said about him. God gave Solomon great wisdom so he could understand many things. His wisdom was as hard to measure. It means, when we measure wisdom nowadays, you measure it by testing their IQ, right? What's the IQ of Albert Einstein? 1 million? No, not 1 million. It's only by hundreds. 150? Actually, they said it's even lower than 150, around 120 something to 130. And yet, he is so smart, right? There was a guy whose IQ was measured higher than that, but he didn't become famous like Albert Einstein. So it's not really a way to determine if a person will be successful by their IQ. But it is one way of measuring the intelligence of some people. And yet, these verses, Solomon's wisdom cannot be measured. So high. His wisdom was as hard to measure as the grains of sand on the seashore. Wow. His wisdom was greater than any wisdom of the East or any wisdom in Egypt. He was wiser than anyone on earth. And if we're going to categorize the life of Solomon, we can put it into three categories. First, when he was young until he became a king. All right? And then when he became a king, the early part of his kingship, and then later on, the latter part of his kingship. Maybe we can subdivide that into two because he was not consistently wise in the eyes of the Lord, right? He was, in fact, the wisest, and yet he lived how do you say, the foolest? The opposite of being the wisest, all right? So let's run through some of the stages in Solomon's life because this is transformation, all right? Who is Solomon in the number, okay? Like if our brother is the eldest, someone is in the middle, someone is the youngest. Solomon is who in the hierarchy of his family? The youngest. Who is his mother? Bathsheba. Well, Bathsheba, her life is very colorful. And David, so I don't want to go there. But it seems like his family is has a very colorful past, right? And it is in their culture that the eldest son should be the next king. Who was the eldest son of King David? Not Absalom. Not Absalom. Adoniah. Adoniah, who committed a crime against his sister, who's the sister, his half-sister, who's the blood sister of Absalom, Tamar. And Absalom was so mad at his brother that he concocted a crime and killed his brother Adoniah. And then we know what happened to Absalom. What happened to him? He rebelled against his dad, and he was killed by his uncle General Joab. And then another brother rebelled again. So we find so much trouble. And if you were Solomon the youngest, knowing the past of your family, will you be proud of your family when bad things are happening? So I'm pretty sure that Solomon was kind of protected by his mom. And he never expected to be the next king. In fact, David had no idea that his other son was already planning to take away the kingdom from his father. But Prophet Nathan came to David and said, David, you have to do something right now. You have to tell the people who will be the successor to your kingdom. And David chose personally Solomon. Now, why do you think King David chose Solomon? If we're going to look at the story in 1 Kings, it's a long story, but let me just look at the highlights. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 1 and chapter 2. Okay, let's go to chapter 2. Because this is the instruction of King David to Solomon. All right? This is the beginning of his transformation. Let me read. When David's time to die drew near, he commanded Solomon his son, saying, I'm about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do, and wherever you turn, that the Lord may establish his word that he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons pay close attention to their way, to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart and with all their soul, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. Now, notice the first part. It says, keep the charge of the Lord your God. David could have said, keep the charge of the Lord my God. But why did it say the Lord your God? It shows that Solomon chose the God of David to be his God also. Was that a good choice? Yes, it was. Because the other sons of David chose other ways and other gods instead of choosing the God of his father, of their father. So the first clue there is transformation will happen when you choose the right God in your life. Disasters happened to the older brothers of Solomon because they chose a different path, different God. But Solomon, although he was the youngest, and yet he chose the God of David, and David chose Solomon because he knows if his God helped him, then certainly the same God will help his son, Solomon. And so the instruction was given to Solomon, follow the ways of God. And he, I'm sure, have told Solomon his own experiences. So let's move fast forward. So David died and Solomon was installed as the king. And what's the first thing that Solomon did? Yes, Braden? Say again? Mayor and Egyptian. Yeah, that's one of the things he did. But there's something in chapter 3 also that David have done. I'm going to read verse 3. Solomon loved the Lord walking in the statutes of David, his father. He loved the Lord and he walked in the statutes or the examples of his father. Several of us here grew up in a Christian family, right? And I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, there were times when I said, again, it's like the same instruction again and again and again every day. It's like sometimes I was saying, come on, give me a break. It's like I can tell already what they're going to tell me. Like early in the morning, what they're going to tell you. We don't have our own beds then. We have mosquito nets. So the first order of the day is fold the mat, the mosquito net, then the blanket, everything. And then fetch water because we don't have running water. Fetch water from the river. And this and that. It's like before we go to school, literally, we have done 2 hours of work already. And then the same day, the following day, the same things like, man, I can't wait till the time I can get out of this house where nobody will tell me what I will do. Does it cross your mind? Wait until I turn 18 here in the United States. But anyways, I finally left the house when I was 16. And I thought, man, I'll be so happy until I realized now I have to cook my own food. I have to wash my own laundry. Oh, man, after one or 2 weeks, literally I cried. I said, I don't mind being told what to do. At least I can enjoy some of the things in our house. I don't have to worry. I just eat, and I can wash dishes, but at least I can eat. I don't have to worry about budget because they will do everything, right? So you see, sometimes you think that without your parents guiding you is a good thing. No. It pays to follow their instructions, right? It helps you transform to be responsible and what else? To be good citizens. How many of you are happy that your parents are telling you what to do? Some are hesitant. Okay, we'll have a talk later. Okay, anyways, Solomon, his transformation started because he loved the Lord and he followed the statutes or the teachings of his father. Not only that, he also, it says, one of the things that he did was he sacrificed to the Lord. He offered. That's part of worship. He knows how to worship the Lord. He sacrificed to the Lord. And while he was sleeping after sacrificing to the Lord, God spoke to him. Now, this is the question. Why God spoke to him only after he committed his life to the Lord and sacrificed to the Lord? Why? Because God knows he is willing to follow, right? And what did God ask him in his dream? Come on, help me. This is a very familiar story. What did God ask him? Yes, Braden? Okay, this is the true version, no? Hollywood make a genie story. But it's not true. Like, make your wish. 3 wishes. But God asked him only 1 wish. And God even gave him a clue. Do you want me to suppress your enemies? Or give this and that? But what did Solomon ask for? Wisdom. Why? Solomon understood that as a young king with division in his family, even the people were not fully convinced that he probably was the best person for the job because he's the youngest. He hasn't proven anything yet. He needed wisdom. And by the way, there's a big difference between knowledge and wisdom. What is knowledge? Yes, Braden, make it simple. What is knowledge?
You are everything you know.
There you go. Everything you know. Head level. What is wisdom?
What you do with the knowledge.
Exactly. The practical application of knowledge. Some people are very good in explaining what is fire, the chemical components, oxygen, and what makes fire? There are elements that makes fire. Oxygen is one of those, the fuel. And yet you ask them, can you please make fire? They don't know. They can explain what fire is, but they cannot make fire. So that is wisdom. Practical application of knowledge, right? God gave Solomon wisdom. And the wisdom that God gave Solomon is the best wisdom that human can ever achieve in this world. He was recognized as the wisest of all the kings. And what was the first test of his wisdom? One day, two mothers came with two babies, one alive, one is dead. Almost same age. And what was the story? There you go. So that's the alive baby in a basket. The dead baby, it's hidden because it's dead. And both of them made a claim to the baby that is alive. Until Solomon said, okay, this is what I'm going to do to determine who is the real mother. Why don't we just cut it into two? Because you both want the baby, so you have 50%, you have the other 50%. And what did the fake mother say? Just do it, like Nike. But what did the real mother say? No. Why? There you go. Real mother will sacrifice her feeling instead of seeing her kids suffer. Oh, we have many mothers here. Isn't that right? Even if you are in pain, you go to work. Even if you're sick, you go to work. You sacrifice your personal feelings because you care for your kids. While the real mother said, okay, just give it to this mom. And the other one said, oh, that's not fair. Just cut into two. I suffer, you suffer, everybody suffers. Very selfish and arrogant mother. And Solomon said, give it to that mother. He's the real mother. And everybody said, wow, that's very wise. Again, another characteristic of being wise is making right choices. Making right judgment. Okay? If you just have knowledge and you don't make right choices, that's not wisdom, right? So Solomon made right choices, and so he became famous that even the Queen of Sheba, we don't know where she came from, maybe India. It says from Far East, and during that time, India was considered Far East. Maybe China, Far East. Now it's called Japan, Far East. Anyways, he came with other wise men to test Solomon's wisdom. And the description of the Bible is, after hearing the wisdom of Solomon, if you heard somebody's wisdom, what will be your reaction? Wow, you'll be excited, right? But you know what happened to the Queen of Sheba when she heard the wisdom of Solomon? It says she fainted. Wow. It's like, how can you faint after? It means she was overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. And everything that Solomon did, the design, all kinds of knowledge, he was very good. Music. If you're going to read Ecclesiastes, okay? That's the book that he wrote, that he said he excelled in everything. Music, all the men have their own uniforms. Everything, every arrangement was very organized, very good. But there's one thing that happened. Maybe not one thing, many things. After Solomon reached the zenith, the peak of his popularity, what happened to Solomon? See? He had his own transformation, but then he had his own deformation also. This is what happened. Solomon thought that he is so wise, he can do everything even without following God. This is a warning to young people. When we come, it is sad, but this is the reality. When our members in the church are still young, small, they love coming to church, participating, attending Youth Vespers. Then they go to college. They're gaining more knowledge. And they thought, I'm smart not to read my Bible anymore or to pray or to come to church because I'm smart. And then they graduate and they have their own job. Oh, I'm smarter now because I'm earning money. And then they start to fall away from the church. Solomon started to fall away because he thought he is wise and he can do what he wanted to do. One of the biggest sins of Solomon that is written in the Bible is marrying so many wives. How many wives, Braden? Say again? 700. As if 700 is not enough, he had 300 concubines. Now, let's say he spent one day, at least one day. How many days in a year? 1,000 divided by 365. At least more than 2 years for one of them to spend time with him. Can you imagine that? It's like having a poultry, right? Well, if we're going to look at the spirit of prophecy, Solomon's idea was like this. Oh, by the way, he didn't really pursue those girls because the kingdoms then want to make peace with him, and they offer the kings and the datus and the barangay captains maybe, or the presidents, prime minister, they said, oh, Solomon, as a sign of our friendship, I'll give you my daughter. And Solomon said, okay, I don't care how your daughter looks like, but I want peace. So she took. So it means during the time of Solomon, he never had any war. Everybody's at peace with him. Now the question is that God's plan of having peace? No. Very clear in the instruction, if you walk in the ways of the Lord. But then it's the way of the world. So the way of the Lord against the way of the world. He chose the way of the world. And he thought, this is the greatest missionary plan. If I will marry the daughter of this king, then I can convert all of them. They will follow God. Was that a good plan? Well, for him, it sounds good. But it's not God's plan. What happened was, instead of him converting his wife and the clan, they brought their own gods, and now Solomon was converted to their religion. And Solomon had so many religions. Later on, the people started following those false religions. Even his own son followed the other gods. It's a sad reality. So, from transformation, there was a deformation. But then again, God in His grace did not abandon Solomon. You will notice there are 3 books that Solomon wrote. Can you help me? What's the first book he wrote? The book of Proverbs. What's the second book he wrote? Songs of Solomon. The Song of the Lover Boy. What's the third book he wrote? Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 7, he finally made his own conclusion. What is written in Ecclesiastes 12:7? This is the conclusion of the whole matter. fear God and give glory to Him, for this is the whole duty of man. So Solomon actually came back to God. He repented. He made his retransformation. And so Solomon's life is like this. Okay? But does he need to really experience his downfall? He didn't have to. He didn't have to. At the beginning, he was loved by the people. But because he has so many wives to support and so many projects, so many houses, I don't know how many children he had. The only way to support his big family is to what? To raise tax. And he raised the taxes so much that during the time of Rehoboam, his son, they said, we don't want you anymore. We want to get rid of the tax system. But Rehoboam, instead of listening to them, he said, oh, you don't want my father's tax system? I will raise it even more. And the kingdom was divided into two. 10 kingdoms against 2. The 10 is the north kingdom, and 2, the Judah and Benjamin clans. That's the result. So we find in the life of Solomon so many lessons for us to learn. But again, the fundamental is if you obey, the first, you have to love the Lord your God, right? Number 2, obey the Lord your God. As long as you walk in His statutes, the Lord will grant you blessings and wisdom, prosperity. Keep following Him, young people. The influence of the world is so strong nowadays. But please, don't abandon the Lord your God. Let us not follow the bad example of Solomon, but rather let us follow the good example of King Solomon. The Lord bless us tonight.
May we all rise for the closing song.